Are you a fan of bone-chilling tales and spine-tingling suspense? Do you long for the days when horror zines ruled the night, delivering terror and thrills with every page? Then you need to check out Worms Horror Zine. Worms Horror Zine is your ticket to a time when horror was raw, gritty, and downright terrifying. This throwback to the classic horror zines of the 70s and 80s is packed with original horror fiction that will keep you up all night. But that's not all. Inside each issue, you'll find chilling articles, devilish games, mind-bending puzzles, and so much more. Each page is a journey into the unknown, crafted by writers and artists who live and breathe horror. Whether you're a longtime horror fan or just discovering the genre, Worms Horror Zine is your ultimate companion for all things creepy and crawly. And guess what? Worms Horror Zine is proud to sponsor the Right Brain Cafe podcast. So, while you're feeding your creative spirit with this podcast, why not feed your darker side with Worms Horror Zine? Visit bookwormshorror.etsy.com and get your worms today. Unleash your inner horror fanatic with Worms Horror Zine, if you dare.
Welcome to the Right Brain Cafe podcast. I'm James, and with me, as always, is Regina.
Hello.
Hello. We're both artists. We try to make stuff happen in the real world. So we're going to talk about the ups and downs of our creative life. We do this every week. If that's something you're into, definitely follow this podcast, because each episode will dive into our own experiences. And actually, I got a lot of experiences to talk about today, and share what's worked, what hasn't, just real talk between artists and our listeners.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and if you're in the studio, at your desk, on the wheel, behind the camera, wherever you are, you get it. This podcast is all about that journey, following your passion, taking control of your creative path, doing what you love, figuring it out along the way. So again, if that's your vibe, give us a follow on whatever podcast app you listen to us on. While you're at it, if you have a way of rating us, do that. That helps the show. Follow us on Instagram at Worms Horror Zine. And I just created an X. I know you're following me, Regina. I think you are the only person, but it's brand new. So if you are on Twitter or X, and I created this, it's at Bookworms Horror. There's no zine, just at Bookworms Horror.
Okay.
And I thought this would be a better way for people to kind of say, hey, I got an idea for a show, or to comment on a recent show.
Oh, that is good. Yeah. It'll grow, because I'm back on Twitter too, or X, and I'm slowly starting to get followers. So just hang in there. It'll happen.
Yeah. I like I said, I never use it, but I figured it'd be a great way, because it's more of conversational, where people can just be like, hey, like that episode, or hey, why don't you do an episode on this? Mm-hmm. So it's at Bookworms Horror. Just put it together. So follow us if you're on X/Twitter, whatever you want to call it. And we have a URL now. It's bookwormshorror.com.
Oh, fancy.
Yeah, so if you go to that takes you to our Bookworms Cartel site. And so let's talk about issue 6, Season of the Witch issue, which I have to say I am so impressed with Clay Chapman for just supporting us.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Way above and beyond. Like, he's literally, anytime I post something on Instagram, he reposts it. So does Kat Delaney. And my favorite thing that happened so far is someone bought the zine and got it signed by Clay and Kat. And I'm like, how did they do that?
I know,
did they go to an event? Were they both at an event recently? But
they do. I mean, Clay's
everywhere.
From following his, and so's Grady Hendrix. Like, those guys work hard. They're constantly out there doing events and promoting and stuff. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, they are. And that's my thing. He's such a hard worker. And for him to take that extra moment to say, hey, Bookworms Horror. I mean, he's in it, but I mean, it's just really cool. I love seeing that. And there seems to be a very cool, horror community on Instagram, and I'm really happy about this issue and how well it's been selling. And I will say I guarantee it will sell out, because like Regina and I, hopefully we both make it to the event we're going to next month in Allentown.
Yeah, so if you're near Allentown, stop by and say hi.
Yes.
What is the event again? We should put
It's the Horror Sideshow Market. I'll put it in the show notes.
Sideshow. It sounds like a good place to sell copies of Carney.
Yeah, you should bring that too.
I will.
It's November 16th. It's a Saturday.
Cool.
But I guarantee, like, whatever we have left by then, I have a feeling they're going to go. So if you haven't picked up the issue yet, again, Grady Hendrix is in it, Clay Chapman, and a bunch of other people. Poetry, fun games. I like somebody posted the picture of the centerfold.
Oh, did they?
Yeah,
oh,
with the
that's
Ouija
cool.
board.
I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this issue is really good. And the former issues, the back issues have been selling well too. I've noticed that we've had a lot of multiple orders.
Yes. Which I had a feeling that would happen.
Yeah, because I posted of the one bookstore in Newtown that still has a couple copies of the first issue, which is currently sold out. I mean, I only have a couple copies for our archives.
I have one, yeah.
You have one. And someone posted, oh, that's the one I need. So that's pretty cool. Maybe she can contact the bookstore and get it.
Yeah. There's been a lot of fun stuff. Somebody posted our zine next to the Halloween 3 DVD or VHS. Because
I saw that.
That's what the cover's based on. And they're like, I didn't even get that. And that was really cool, too.
And do we have any contenders for our... We don't have to say who they are. To post their picture with bookworms.
Oh, you know what? Not yet. Face. I don't know with the face. So there's been a ton of people posting as far as like, I got it. So I might just, if nobody posts it with their face, I'll grab one of those and I'll do like pull the name out of the hat and we'll do that. But everybody's been posting when they get it in the mail.
I know, which is great.
Nobody's like, I have to double check to see if anybody held it in their hand and we can see their face because I got a lot of pictures of hands holding it.
Yeah.
And so that's exciting. What's going on in the world of Regina St. Clair?
Well, I just did a podcast with Harpies in the Trees, Merce, and she's getting back, and she moved from Germany, so she's been in that transition process. She has a great YouTube channel, so that should be. Gut. Yes, I think she does speak a little German. So she will be posting that this week. And then other than that, I'm working on my new novel called Final Dress. I took it off Wattpad because I didn't get in the short list for the Waddies, which is fine.
Yeah.
I already won that award.
Yeah, you already got that on. What's that called when you get the Emmy, the Grammy, the EGOT or something?
Oh, okay. No,
it was in 30 Rock.
Oh, when they have the Grammy,
so it's the Emmy, the Grammy, the Oscar, and the Tony, and they called it the EGOT.
Huh. Yeah, I guess a few people have gotten that.
So like you already got the Webby, and so like
I get the Webby and the Waddy and the
you got the W's. Just need one more.
W's. But so that's I took it down. I've been It's nice to take a break from a work in progress. Everyone's always says that's a good idea. Like when you write the first draft, shove it in a drawer for a month or two and don't look at it. It really does. You come back with fresh eyes and perspective. And I know like sometimes you open that file with dread and then you start reading and you're like, you know what? This is pretty good. I need to work on some things, but hey, I don't remember writing that scene this well. This is pretty cool. So I'm excited about it. I'm hoping to get this out by Christmas. And then my current collection of Halloween stories, a short collection, is out and was like in the #1 spot for at least a week.
Yeah, we'll put links in the show notes for all this, but the Halloween one's called Halloween Haunts, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I had to pick. I don't buy your stuff. I get your paperback, so I got to get the paperback.
Yeah, it's a print. There's print too, and I'm doing a giveaway. I should mention that on my YouTube channel.
I saw that. That's a giveaway of Horror Haunts and
Bookworms.
Issue 6 Bookworms. Yep.
Yeah, I'm giving out 2 packages and some Halloween gifts. So so that's what's been going on. I'm working hard as always.
And what's the podcast? Is it called
Merce's?
Yeah.
Merce's. It's called Back Cover. It's brand new. I'm on the premiere.
Oh, how exciting!
What do you call it?
episode.
Broadcast or episode.
The premiere episode, or the pilot.
Episode. The pilot.
That's exciting. I'm gonna excited to hear all about that.
Yeah, that should be up like in a day or two.
Yeah. Another thing that's happening right now is Pennsylvania.
I know. I'm a few days behind, but
I noticed.
Just gonna catch up.
It's okay. That's the good thing about it. You can catch up. And it's interesting that you brought up when you put your book like in the drawer and you look at it. I've been looking at like some of the drawings that I did earlier, and I'm like, oh, it's better than I thought. It's the same thing applies to a lot of art, where it's like if you take a back step from whatever it is you did, whether it's drawing, writing, you come back and you're like, I've read some things where I'm like, did I write this? Like so long ago, I can't even remember if I wrote it, but I'm like, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
I hope I did.
No, I love Pennsylvania, and I'm so glad you do it every year. And I've been enjoying watching your Instagram stories and seeing what everyone's been doing. It's very cool.
Yeah,
I like the person who's, I don't know who it is, who's doing that kind of color ink.
Yes,
those are really good.
I think the name is Kid Vicious.
Okay, that's a great name.
And my favorite one I've seen so far is the Devil. I think it looked really cool. It was like all red and black.
Yeah, very cool.
And my friend Jake is asking if we're going to do something for November. And we've been having a blast trying to come up with stupid names for November. But nothing's set if we're going to keep the drawing going.
Oh, yeah, you should. Yeah.
Maybe. We'll see.
If I think of anything, I'll let you know. Well, that's good.
So this episode, we're going to talk about, should you work for exposure? No. And so what they're saying is, we will pay you with exposure. And let me give you a story from my rock and roll. No, actually, it wasn't from it's from my playing in a band days, but recent playing in a band. And it was my Plan 9 band, which we played out recently up until COVID. Then COVID destroyed it all. We haven't played since. But we did a lot of beer fest and things like that, played some shows. But this one was something on the boardwalk, and I think it might have been Wildwood. I'm not sure. And so I asked them, and they're like, oh, well, we don't pay you. You get exposure because you're on the boardwalk. But technically...
On the boardwalk.
Yeah, it's not...
Sorry.
It's all right. It's not really on the boardwalk. It was like, you know how like the boardwalk has these sort of piers that go out, and so it was somewhere behind like a roller coaster. Like when I did some research on it, it was like in a really bad place that nobody's
I just flashed to like the Woody Allen film when he said he lived beneath the Coney Island roller coaster.
Yes. That's what it was like. But it was not a place people would walk by. And the only people there when I watched like some YouTube videos there was like a couple people who you knew were like friends of the band.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no. And if I was younger, in my 20s, we would have done that. Right.
Yeah.
And it never did anything for us back then. And it insults me. It really does insult me when anybody tells you, we're not going to pay you at all, but you'll get exposure.
Yeah.
And honestly, the only way I would do that is if I'm opening for Taylor Swift or something. That's exposure. You know? And even then you would get paid, but you're not getting exposure. It really bothers me. So what are your thoughts on that? Because I want to get into this.
Well, this reminds me, a few years ago, there was a viral video that went around, and it's really it's a great video by Harlan Ellison, the famous was he science fiction writer? Mostly, he did a lot of different writing.
Yeah,
I'm not familiar with his work. I don't know if I've ever read anything, but I know who he is. He did a video about. I think if you just type in like pay the writer or something, about how he was asked to participate in like a DVD extra for some project he was involved in. He's like, okay, but what are you going to pay me? And the producer's like, well, it's exposure. And he just goes off on this rant, and he's an established writer at this point. And he was, I think it was a major studio was producing this. He's like, really, then, you're not going to pay me? You have to pay me. And I remember watching that and thinking, yeah, I understood where it was coming from, but at the same time, I'm kind of looking over my shoulder because I'm like, well, I'm doing a film project, Gemini Rising, and I'm not paying people, so it felt kind of torn about that, because I wasn't able to pay my actors. It was a volunteer thing.
Let me back up because that's not the same.
Okay.
Here's why it's not the same. You're not making money either.
Well, that's true. And I was financing it.
You're literally losing money on it. Right? Like you're paying.
Don't remind me, James. I'm still paying some of those bills.
I meant the you as the universal you, because it's every filmmaker who's out there trying to make a film is not being paid. So right. I don't see the harm where you're like, hey, do you mind acting in something? And honestly, as the director, producer, whatever, you're doing all of it. Like you're really doing more work than everybody you're asking to come in and help.
Yeah.
That's not the same as, hey, I'm putting out something that people are going to pay to see.
Oh, I see the distinction. Yeah.
And
like someone is getting paid. Like yes. The guy that owns the bar is getting paid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The guy who owns the bar, the guy who's like putting together this band thing on the boardwalk, they're making good money. Because here's the thing. If it's a bar, and I'm talking like in the band type thing, they tell you you're going to exposure, but it's not just you. You're not the only band. They're putting on a big event. So let's say there's 5 bands. Each band brings X amount of people. Each one of those people have to pay to see you play. And so that guy's making all this money to put this show on. And they're not doing it where they're losing money. You know what I mean? I know that because I know what they're charging. That's not
why would they be doing it if they were losing money?
Yes, exactly. So there's a difference when you're talking about independent filmmakers because that's just how it works.
I think it's a choice. Like if I were to do it again, and this is why I'm glad that we're able to pay, and we can talk about Bookworms in a bit. I think it was really important when we came up with this that we decided, hey, we're going to pay a pro rate, even if it's going to take us a while to break even on this project. And now it's starting to gain momentum after into our second year because we believed in this project and we want to attract the best writers. And whether there are names or not, like we want really good writers involved in this project, and we want to respect them with the payment that they deserve. And so I think if I were to do an independent film again, I would at least have a minimal payment, because I do think for the crew, although I ended up paying, I would pay some crew sometime because there was no way I could do it without doing that. There would be a minimum payment and a contract, more of a fair, upfront kind of working environment. So it's because, when you don't pay, I think some people don't feel respected and it breeds resentment, and then maybe people don't show up, and then you've got all kinds of problems. Sometimes even when you do pay them, they don't show up. But, I was talking to a good friend of mine the other day who's putting together a project, and he's paying, and it's a passion project that he's been working on for years, and he's been paying, a stipend, but he's still having trouble with that kind of thing. And, it's like you have to make them care. But if we just bring it back to yourself, let's just talk about the individual artist. Like if you and I went to a book signing at a local bookstore, we wouldn't get paid for that, but it would be good exposure depending on the kind of crowd that it would attract. So I think each artist, each creative has to measure what that means for them. But I don't think you should be aware of like the boardwalk situation where someone is going to exploit you for their own gain, which is out there.
Yeah, but you just said something about the bookstore. If you're doing that, you're selling your books. You're making money selling your books, right?
Well, yeah, you would hope.
But that's different. I still think like it's not, if a bookstore says, hey, we're doing an event, you come and bring your books to sell, right? obviously, I don't think they would. I don't understand why a bookstore would say we're going to pay you to be here. Like,
Well, I do think people like big names are paid for some of these promotional events.
I'd like to know if that's. I don't know.
Yeah, I
mean,
guess it depends.
I'd like to know what that is because I'm sure there's some sort of. So the way it works with like a comic convention type thing is the convention approaches a big name celebrity. They tell them, we're going to guarantee you're going to get this much money. You're probably going to get a lot more than this, but we'll make sure that even if it's bad, we're paying you this. Right? So that's like big names. Like they're not going to come out and they'll say, look, you're going to make, and they make crazy money.
Like the people who do like the autographs at conventions.
And it's out of control now as far as I'm concerned. I can't even, I think Elizabeth Olsen is like almost $300 to get her autograph.
Wow.
Yeah. She's at this, I'm bringing that up because this Saturday's New York Comic Con.
Oh,
or
okay.
this weekend. And they charge now for a photograph, even with your own phone, right? I'm not talking about professional photos. So it used to be you would go up, you get an autograph, it was maybe $20, and you say, hey, can I get a picture? And you get your phone out, you take a selfie. That was it. Now it's like you either pick, I'm getting an autograph or I'm getting a selfie, and the prices are equally like $60 to take a picture, a selfie with someone. That's just insane. But those guys are told you're going to make money. They do.
But if they can get it, I guess you can get it.
For someone like Doylestown Bookshop, who would say, like that local author event, we have you here, you sell your books, they get a cut, right? And then you get a cut.
Right.
So that makes sense to me. And you're getting more of a cut than they are, right? So like your percentage is higher. I don't see that as working for exposure. Because, yeah, you might not sell anything, but you probably will at least sell one thing, right? And it's not costing you anything. If it's costing you something to show up, then you have to weigh the cost to have that table versus, do I think I can sell that many?
Yeah.
And then you're deciding you're deciding if I want to do this for exposure.
Right. I think it is always in the artist's and the creative person's hand to decide. And sometimes you'll make the wrong decision. Sometimes you'll be maybe surprised that, hey, I did get a lot of exposure from doing that. And there's, I guess, good exposure versus bad exposure. You want to be exposed. You don't want to be exposed for the wrong things.
But there's other ways.
Maybe there's no bad publicity. I don't know. I would feel very, like doing publicity stunts, I think can backfire horribly. You got to be careful.
Yeah. But when we went to the Doylestown Bookshop for the Dark Ink event, where they had all those different authors, it was that one decision that you and I made to go there and meet basically Clay Chapman.
Yeah.
And that free thing we did, well, I mean, I bought books, but that was on my own personal thing. But I mean, it was free to go there. It was free to talk to them. And because of that, Bookworms got more exposure.
Definitely.
Right?
Well, I think that's probably more that what you're talking about is probably more of a direct pay to play thing in the music industry or the indie music scene, which you definitely have experience in, because that, I remember when I lived in New York City, I lived a few blocks from Times Square, and there was always those poor guys trying to sell tickets to the comedy shows. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Have you ever came across those guys? Because that's how they would do it. They would have to go out on the street and try to get people to buy tickets, and the club owners, they don't have to worry about it.
Yep. Yeah, that was the same with it was called the Dugout in Levittown.
I remember the Dugout.
Yeah.
I've never been there, but I remember friends of mine played there.
The bar's still there. I forget what it's called, but they had the Battle of the Bands.
Right.
You didn't get paid, right?
James, you have got to write a short story, a horror story about the Battle of the Bands, because this is in you.
I did get a knife pulled on me at one of those.
I know.
But like I'm saying, you didn't have it was all about exposure. But there's 5 bands. They gave you tickets. You had to basically do what that guys would do. You'd go out to everybody in the world and say, "Here's a ticket. Come to my show." And the person who got the most tickets won the Battle of the Bands. It had nothing to do with talent. And we didn't get paid. The reason why we would do this is because you wanted to play on a good night. So a good night would be like a Friday night or Saturday night. You would never play a Friday or Saturday night at the dugout. You would play a Tuesday night for a battle of the bands. And then if you won, John and Peters used to do this too, but not this way. They did it in a different way. And I think it's different owners now. I don't know.
I just bought a book about John and Peters.
There's a book about John and Peters?
Yeah, it's I bought it at the Farley's bookstore. It's signed by the author. It's called Still Drinking and Smoking, Rockin' and Rollin', An Oral History of New Hope's John and Peters by Amy Gates Wolfling. I have it right here. I didn't have it memorized. But yeah, it's all about John and Peters.
I take it she's local.
Yeah, I know a lot of people in the book because I grew up at that bar like a lot of people in that area. But anyway, yeah, I don't remember ever going to a Battle of the Bands there, though.
No, they didn't have a Battle of the Bands. They had... So, Finish the Battle of the Bands was basically you ran out harking, like barking like a carnival barker, come to my show,
Yeah.
And if you did well, if you won the Battle of the Bands on Tuesday, then there'd be another Battle of the Bands like on a Wednesday night, right? And it got harder and harder. The numbers went up. And so you had to... That's the only way you would get there onto a Friday night. Now, what John and Peters did was, we'll give you an awful night. We'll give you a Monday or Tuesday night, and you have to bring X amount of people. Mm-hmm. And if you don't do that, you're not coming back. If you do, you graduate to a Wednesday night, and now that number goes up.
I guess that makes sense because those people have a business.
I know, but here's the thing that bothers me about this area.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it is here. There's no bar that really has a following. They might have regulars, that show up and just drink, but there's not it's not a following that people are going to discover new music. That's
well, John and Peters is one of those rare music venues like the Stone Pony and Asbury Park that's been there forever and it has a certain fame attached to it. And that's what this book is all about. And how it's kind of always stayed the same, which is nice. But
I don't put it in the same category as like the Stone Pony, though. I don't know.
They have Springsteen, and we have Livingston Taylor
or Ween.
Well, Ween is probably. I mean, I was there one night with in the summer seeing Righteous play, and some girls came up, and she's like, "Oh my God, John Mayer's here!" I didn't like he was watching, and there was just an article in Philly Mag about New Hope becoming like the place where the rich people are now. Like Bradley Cooper. Oh
yeah, Bradley Cooper and Taylor Swift just did.
Yeah, Taylor Swift.
She bought a farm.
I know, and I grew up on a farm outside New Hope, so it's kind of interesting now to see that happening.
Yeah.
But and Jacob Dylan, all these people, and they hang out at John and Peters apparently, so it's pretty cool. That cool. Could be good exposure.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't see these people reaching out and helping anyone.
No, I don't either, because they're probably like, it's my night off. I don't want to be bothered.
Yeah. It's funny you brought that up because I remember I was just thinking about this. I was at Monster Mania convention and Chris is friends with Reggie Bannister from Phantasm.
Oh, yeah.
And so we go and get up in the morning and we go meet Reggie and they have a restaurant in the hotel in Cherry Hill. So we go sit and eat, and then Don Coscarelli comes and sits with us.
Oh my God.
I know. And then Lance Henriksen comes and sits with us. And it was just like,
wow.
At this table with...
It's kind of like my dream come true, because that's my favorite horror movie of all time.
Oh, it was just surreal. And I couldn't even...
Wait, did you get pictures? They didn't charge you for pictures, did you?
This was before they... No. So it wasn't like you paid to have breakfast with them. It was just because we were with Reggie that they all sat with us.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
And so we're just having breakfast and talking about that thing about exposure. Like, I didn't even know what to say. I think I just ate my eggs and like listened.
Right.
I couldn't say anything. I was, first of all, like Lance Henriksen is sitting to my left eating breakfast with me. Like I was like, what the hell's going on? I remember seeing friends of mine walk by and looking over like, what the hell is going on? How did you manage this?
That's hilarious.
But again, that's not like, that wouldn't be something that would equal exposure. You know what I mean? It's a cool experience, but it would have been rude, I think, to say,
Yeah,
hey, by the way, I'm working on a film, you know?
You don't want to ruin it by, when I've bumped into famous people. You never want to be that guy that, like
Yeah.
I met Patti Smith and I'm a big fan, and and I was like, oh, Patti, and she's like, I like your jacket, I was like, oh, wow.
And so when it comes to writing, you get paid, I think, so little to begin with, if you're getting paid. Like when you think about it, like I was bringing up a different publisher who's like, we're going to pay you this much for a lot of words. And I was doing the math, and it came down to like not even a penny per word. Like,
wow.
And like, it was actually like 0.008. So I don't even know what that is. It's not 8 cents.
No.
So like that per word.
Wow.
Like you can't even make it into an actual cent.
Can't even round it up to a penny.
No, you can't. You wouldn't go to any other profession and say, Doc, I need you to do this operation, but can you do it for exposure? I'll tell everybody about you,
Yeah, that would be scary.
Or, hey, my car, I need it inspected, but guess what? I know a lot of people, and you will get a lot of exposure if you fix my car and inspect it.
Well, I think that you have to decide, each individual artist has to decide if they're just not going to be that cheap date anymore, but it is a market-driven industry, writing, among other things, and music and all these things. And if someone's not willing to pay you for your product, then you have to weigh, well, maybe if I...
No, see,
I think that is. I was going to say that becomes a problem, because then you're the one that gives it away, and people don't value it.
Yeah. So it's funny you talked about it earlier, how low we went with the price of Bookworms on issue 1.
I know.
And as we went up, if you're listening, it's because we had to, in order to afford to pay these authors. Like, if we didn't,
and the printing costs went up too.
I mean, for everything, actually, that's why it is. But then when we went up, and I was like, we're at $10, and people are buying it, and I was like, and I wanted to say, like, if Regina says, like, oh, it's $10, I was going to say, we're worth it. We're literally, this zine is worth it.
I know, and I tend to still think everything's in 1995.
Yes, I think it. Yeah, exactly. Yes, I mean,
like I used to charge like $5 for a cover charge when I did events at the studio, but now it's like, no, it's at least $10.
It's insane how expensive everything is today, and that's the price of us to print and pay for authors and do all this stuff is why the price is there. If it wasn't that,
but it's not a high. I mean, $10 for the zine.
No, it's not.
Is a good price.
It's
and
a great
also,
price.
I've seen. This is something no artist should ever do. I've seen people charging a fee to submit work to a publication like an anthology or a zine or something. So
you decide if $5 is your value. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that I think I have no problem saying $10 for this zine, because one, I love the idea that when you buy it, you're allowing a writer to get paid for what they do and get paid a professional rate, right? Like,
true.
I would feel pretty shitty if we were making the money we make and the writer's not really getting anything for that.
No. And, I published 3 anthologies for charity.
Yeah. Well, that's totally different.
No, that is totally different. But that is also something that I was going to say, if you're an artist and you feel like you need exposure, that is one way to get exposure, especially if among the other authors, there are a lot of people. Like I saw on X, there's an anthology. I think Clay Chapman might be in it. There are a bunch of authors we would recognize, horror authors. It's work based on The Stand, Stephen King's The Stand. And I've been seeing everyone posting that.
Oh, yeah, it's called...
The End of the World? Is
yeah, it's What Happens at the End of the World or something like that.
Yeah, something
I just saw that.
Right, you saw it. So that's exposure. So if somebody who's not as well known as those other authors is associated with that. And maybe they didn't get, I don't know if they got paid or not. They probably did. But my point is sometimes people do things for charity. That could be, and also you're doing something for charity. So that's good. That's good
speaking
exposure.
of charity, last night on YouTube, they had Scare the Vote or Scare Up the Vote.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. Mm-hmm.
And that was like pretty much everybody we know in the horror industry was there talking about raising money for Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris? I always say it wrong.
Kamala?
Is it Kamala or Kamala?
I know. I'm not sure. I think it's Kamala Harris.
I don't know. I know, but anyway, they raised $20,000 in one night. That's pretty amazing. You know, I again decide what your value is, and don't let people bully you into not having that value and saying no. Well, and if it's exposure, let's look at it this way. Think of magazines that actually, like the ones that will give you exposure will pay you. Like, what's the one, Alfred Hitchcock, you know, like those little ones you get at Barnes & Noble.
Oh, okay.
They're extremely hard to get into. I'm not saying that it's easy, but the ones that actually will end up getting you exposure are going to be ones that are paying you.
Well, there's a big exception to this, and I don't know if she still does that, but remember Oprah Winfrey's book club?
Okay.
I don't think Oprah ever pays people to be on her show or to do interviews, but that's great exposure. Just saying, don't turn that one down.
Yeah, that's like,
I know. I'm just putting it out there.
I'm trying to think of like how that works, because you're guaranteed, like, to me, you're pretty much, if you go on Oprah, you're guaranteed your books are going to sell.
Absolutely.
So I am getting paid.
Yes, you are.
I couldn't imagine the author who goes on Oprah and doesn't sell a book. Like, that must be, like, they must have failed miserably in their show on the interview, because I guarantee they're all immediately national bestsellers.
Yeah, like that stupid book, The Bridges of Madison County, which was like one of her first like big. I think I read it when it came, in a library copy, and I'm like, I made the guy like a multimillionaire, and he dropped his nice wife for 30 years and got with some young hot girl, like that. Probably ruined his life in reality, although I sound bitter, but like he sold this dumb book just because Oprah liked it, and it's like winning the lottery.
Right. And I'm talking, those are exceptions. Like,
I know.
If Stephen King tweets about your book, guess what? You're going to probably do pretty well.
Oh my God. I've seen him tweet about people's work, and they're just like, I got excited the other day because I was on X and I got followed by Stephen King, and I thought it turned out to be a fake account.
Yeah, like the fan accounts.
It was like a fan account, but at first my heart was fluttering. I'm like, oh my God. But no,
yeah.
I was going to screenshot it and send it to you, but then luckily I realized it before I could embarrass myself.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like other art mediums and how this plays into it. So if you're a fine artist, you know more fine artists than I do.
Well, I used to do an art salon that we would have artists. I think we did we charge a small fee? It was not a lot, because we hung the art and everything. And that was more like a celebration. It was a free event. We did it like 5 years in a row. And I think some of the artists may have gotten a little snippy that we weren't better organized as far as having like a salesperson on the floor. But they could be there and represent their art. And people did make some sales just through. But we would have a huge crowd show up every year. We would have over 100 people. So it was pretty good exposure.
Yeah, and there's another one that's probably good exposure, and I don't know if it's still going on, but it is, but it's changed a little bit. It's called Art All Night in Trenton.
Oh, yeah.
And you have one piece you submit, you make up whatever the price is, and you're there, and people go to this. And
well, that used to always be the same night as our event, and we would have people come from that. And at first we were like, oh, well, it's like, we're competing with this event. It's like, no, they would actually go to that event and then come to ours and like make a night out of it. we're not far from Trenton. In fact, you could take the train from one to the other.
Oh yeah, right to Bristol. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
and art all night happens all night. It's like,
Yeah.
I think it's like all night long. So you could easily do that. But that's something that's not really going to hurt you as far as money wise. I don't think you get paid, but you're there to sell your stuff, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you know, Lynette Shelley, she's an artist she was involved in the weirdness a little bit.
Okay.
You know, she's a successful artist. She's very good. And she really hustles. You know, she's at all of these events and constantly doing like studio tours and promoting her work so she can make a living doing it. And, you know, I have a lot of respect for her. It's not easy. Like I struggle with this myself because I want to sit down and do the writing. And then when it comes to doing the promotion, I've got to work on that end.
Yeah, it's not easy. And most artists just struggle with that part. And that's why, you know, for a writer, an agent is a good thing because you have somebody who that's their job and they're good at it and they help you get, you know, seen because they have the skills that you don't have. And that's the same, you know, with actors having agents and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice if you do have that, but until you do, you have to be your own advocate. But, you know, you're good at that. Like, I feel like you and I work pretty well as a team with this stuff. And, you know, so far it seems pretty, like with Bookworms, it's a side project, but it's not one that I feel ever stressed out about. Like, I really have fun with that.
Yeah. I agree. What I wanted to bring up about exposure also is social media stuff that seems like kind of BS to me. So TikTok does this. They want you to use your craft, whatever that may be. Maybe you're a musician or maybe you're an artist, whatever it is, create a commercial. And we talked about this before with your Zatarain's thing. But, you know, what they're asking you to do is do your work for free. And then hopefully you might get $500.
Yeah, that's such an old scam in some ways, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, they always want to promote that one person that makes it, you know, the Justin Bieber who gets discovered on YouTube. But
that's different. Even that, if you think about it, Bieber didn't do the name. Like, I would challenge anyone to go on Twitter, X, and give me a name of somebody who did one of these contests. So remember, Project Greenlight was another thing that came out.
Oh, yeah.
Like, but the Super Bowl. So the one is the Super Bowl. They do Doritos does a commercial every year.
And yours was so good.
I liked mine.
Is yours on your YouTube channel?
Yes, it is. What I'm saying is, if you could tell me who made it, like somebody who's famous or their career took off after doing some sort of competition.
There was only
from
one
social media that not like Bieber. Bieber got discovered because him and his mom would put him on there, and then people were like following him, and then it took off. I'm talking about like who won the Zatarain's thing, you know, and where are they?
Well, Project Runway, I know. I used to follow that show, the fashion contest, the competition.
Yeah,
it might be still running. I stopped watching it, but
that's the TV show, though, right?
It's a TV show, but I'm just thinking of all of those seasons. I think there's only one, and I'm struggling to remember his name right now. But there's only one fashion designer that actually made it, in quotes, you know, who put together his own like successful business, like on a level where he's competing with top fashion designers. And has like a brand at Macy's and stuff like this. But yeah.
Even those, I think if you're on American Idol or The Voice, I think you have a better shot of something.
Well, that is exposure.
Turning that into something than if I'm talking about where Instagram, Facebook, or any of these social medias that they're never in it for you. Like, they are trying to use whatever eyeballs you bring to their platform.
Well, yeah,
they are going to benefit, not you. So there was a musician, Frances. She's still around, I guess. Frances Forever, and had a very, very popular song go viral on TikTok called "Space Girl." And you know, and then if you're a musician you know how we were talking about everybody has their own book publisher, the publishing company? Everybody has their own music label now.
Oh, okay.
So she was approached by probably 100,000 different labels. And if you don't have a lawyer,
Yeah,
then,
forget it.
yeah, because
Your first phone call should always be to
the lawyer,
a trusted lawyer.
And get that and go through everything, because, you know, what did TikTok, you know, she might have made, and I've had millions of views on certain things, and I've never, even with multiple videos on TikTok with over 1 million views, I've never broke $1,000. Like making, you know what I mean? Maybe total 500. And
For like $1 million?
No, that's like everything. That's like multiple million views. And then every other view of hundreds and thousand views and the 10,000 views, you know?
Well, that's pretty cool, James, that you had that success on TikTok. I remember. Are you still doing TikTok stuff?
No, because that opened my eyes to the only way it is financially viable is to be making videos and hitting 1 million views on every video.
Yeah.
Which is nearly
Bill Maher made a joke about that recently. I was watching his show and he was talking about some band went viral. I forget the name. It's a girl singer. I'm not sure who it is. And she had 100 million views. And he said, and you know, she made $8 or something.
Yes.
You know, he made a joke about that because it's like, really, that it's look, the odds are stacked against you, I guess, and the house always wins in these situations, because even with Facebook, which I despise, I still have a Facebook page for my author page, but I hate Facebook for that reason. And every time I'm on there, I just it's become Walmart. It's just so bad.
I'll tell you, the only reason I'm on Facebook is because my parents, that's the only way they digitally communicate with me.
Well, there you go. But
my
parents are dead, so I'm okay.
Well, yeah. I just feel like I would get rid of it otherwise. But yeah, and the thing about having, you know, the house always wins, this with social media is like the equivalent of this, hey, you'll get exposure. And, you know, it's not the case with these social medias. You could get the exposure, but you're making nothing when they're the ones you're making them money and you're getting pennies. And it's the same with Spotify and all that. Like, if I was a serious musician, I would focus more on selling product, like physical vinyl, cassettes, because all the kids want cassettes now. And
well, that's also going back to our Bookworm Zine philosophy with the analog. I liked what you posted a little thing on Instagram, less screens, more screams.
Yeah,
that's cool. Because I agree. Like I love collecting comics and the tangible items, old vinyl records. You know, there is something. Maybe it's a little niche, but I do think younger people are starting to see the value in it, and that's really cool. Just like we talked about, actually going to the bookstore event and showing up and having fun and meeting people versus just liking a post on Instagram or something.
Yes, yeah, and I think if you're an artist and you want exposure, I think you're going to get better exposure by just being out in public and networking, and that means, you know, going it costs money to get into, but if you went to Comic-Con and just walked down Artist Alley and just talked with every artist there and said, and got advice from them, you're paying probably $75 to go there. That's so expensive now. But,
that is expensive.
But just to get in the door, it's $75. But it's a fun day. So you're in New York City, you know, for $75 to go talk to pretty much every artist in the industry when it comes to comics and not just comics, but just art general, I think that's very valuable.
Yeah.
And
that's
they can
cool.
give you some amazing advice. And the thing about the Artist Alley is they don't charge you for an autograph. You bring a comic they drew, they'll sign it for you.
Neat.
Yes.
Well, you know, I think that what we're talking about is like every individual artist has to kind of weigh what to do, but just beware. There are people out there like the carny on the boardwalk who are just trying to take, it's like 3-card Monty. You have to really be careful because I always thought that when people are making a living out of someone's dream is pretty sleazy.
Yeah. And that's what I'm talking about. That it really angers me. And that's why we were going to talk about something else. And I was like, no, let's do this, because I just was going and looking at other people out there and what they pay for certain things. And I saw so much about not paying, and then like basically paragraphs of why we're not paying, and it's trying to make me feel better that you're not going to pay. Like, no.
Yeah. And also like, I was talking about the screenwriting competitions. I've gotten tons of rejections too, but I've won several screenwriting competitions with some of my scripts and been in, honorable mention, all that stuff. None of this has equaled any money in my pocket.
Right.
It's nice to get the certificate. It's nice to get the little laurels to put on your poster or whatever, but none of it has, there's not been one sale, but that doesn't mean it won't happen. But, it's that's kind of, you got to know that going into it, or else you can just be like, I'm determined to sell my script, and then you've got to find an agent. I mean, I don't think doing competitions is the way to go. It can give you a good ego boost and other things, but no one's ever approached me and said, hey, I want to do your script that you won all these awards for.
It's been probably a month since our last episode.
Yeah.
And we've been really busy.
Yeah,
with not only the zine, but a whole bunch of other stuff in our lives. So we try to do this every week, if possible. And so we hopefully will be back in a week with a new episode.